If your child has recently been diagnosed as dyslexic, or you suspect that they might be dyslexic, you might be feeling worried, anxious, or overwhelmed. We're here to explain a little bit about dyslexia, how it's diagnosed, and also how to support it. Dyslexia affects between 10 and 15% of people. This makes it the highest incidence specific learning difficulty or learning difference.
Typically, dyslexia presents as challenges associated with reading, writing and spelling. But research shows that dyslexia doesn't have a bearing on intelligence. In fact, the same research is telling us that 40% of our top entrepreneurs are dyslexic, which is roughly 3 times more than the general population.
Dyslexia occurs because of differences in the way that the brain processes information. Quite often this is around language-based information. But everybody's different and everybody's unique. It's not unusual for dyslexia to occur alongside other specific learning difficulties, such as attention deficit disorder or ADD, dyspraxia, which is also known as developmental coordination disorder, or dyscalculia, which is difficulties with maths and numbers.
The exact causes of dyslexia are unknown, but we know that it runs in families, and so it's likely to be genetic.
Dyslexia is most often identified and diagnosed when a child starts school. It might manifest as problems with learning to read, with getting sounds in the right order with words, with spelling, remembering things, and particularly remembering things in the right sequence. But we've learned that dyslexia can also bring great strengths. So innovative thinking, creativity, gist memory, good verbal communicators. So it's not all doom and gloom, and there are many positives associated with dyslexia.
We began to suspect that our daughter was dyslexic because the challenges she was experiencing at school were not only educational, but they seemed to be affecting her on a fundamental emotional level.
Other key signs to look out for are being bright and able, but unable to get their ideas down on paper. Have areas in which they excel, particularly creativity and problem solving. Act as the clown or be disruptive to mask what they see as their failings. Become withdrawn and isolated, being able to do one thing at a time very well, but can't remember an entire list. Look glazed when language is spoken too quickly. Have difficulties being organised. Go home exhausted at the end of a normal day, or exhibit angry, frustrated behaviour at home. If you see these behaviours, it's always worth contacting your child's school. Schools differ in how they manage and support dyslexia, but dyslexia is part of a legal framework that includes the Children and Families Act 2014. There's a description to that in the link below. Some schools may be able to test and diagnose your child's dyslexia, but most often parents will have to pay privately for an assessment, and this is most frequently the way children are diagnosed.
When my daughter was 12, we took her to see an educational psychologist for a dyslexia assessment. The resulting report from that assessment enabled us as parents to feel really empowered because we could really start to understand the challenges that my daughter was going through within the school environment. More so, it also helped us to build a dialogue with the school about what reasonable adjustments should be put in place to support our daughter's education.
The assessment will test your child's reading, spelling, writing, memory, speed of processing, and also their underlying reasoning abilities. Following the assessment, you'll not only receive a comprehensive and detailed report that contains the results, it will also contain very detailed and specific recommendations to support your child with their learning.
In the case of my daughter, one simple change they made was to do away with having to use pen and paper to write lots of text. We moved to our daughter using a laptop, which enabled her to be able to access text in a way that worked for her. But we have to remember that school resources, money, time and training on special educational needs and dyslexia is actually really thin on the ground.
We do hear of too many cases where a school can't or won't support a dyslexic child. Where that is the case, or where the child needs more support than the school can provide, there is a process in place to apply for an Educational Health and Care Plan, or EHCP. Currently, schools have to fund the first £6,000 of any support. Within the current climate, with budget being stretched, this can be particularly challenging for schools, so on occasion, sometimes they are therefore reluctant to fund dyslexia support. It is important to note that any parent, young person or school can request a needs assessment for an EHCP under the Children and Families Act 2014. It does not have to be the school that makes the request for this. Often, parents are unaware of this fact and rely on the school to make the application. This can cause unnecessary delays in the process.
Sometimes as parents we can be so focused on the academic attainment of our kids that we can sometimes forget that there's a huge emotional well-being element. This stems from a child not feeling like they're fitting in with their peers at school. They might have really low confidence. They might even be telling themselves that they're stupid because their friends are doing so much better with the countless exams and tests that they're subjected to. What we do know is if these feelings are left unchecked and not supported, this can lead on to more severe emotional well-being challenges. It's also tiring for you. In a recent survey, 77% of the parents that responded said that they sometimes felt exhausted when dealing with the challenges that come from their child's dyslexia. And 76% reported that they sometimes lost patience and got frustrated with their dyslexic child. The great thing that you can do to empower your child is to invest time and effort into helping your child do things that they're great at. In the case of my daughter, she loved musical theatre. Singing and acting and dancing helped her to not only vent the frustrations of being dyslexic, but she saw in herself something that she was really good at and could take pride in. One piece of advice I'd like to give you as a parent is to remember that when your child has a dyslexia diagnosis, that doesn't change who your child is. It is simply a measure of their strengths and their weaknesses. So going forward, applaud their strengths, but help them to find the solutions and the strategies that will help them to manage their weaknesses.
We hope you found this helpful. For more information, check out the British Dyslexia Association's website, and don't forget you can talk to other parents on Mumsnet.